Hello everyone, my name is Lowko and it is time for another professional match of StarCraft 2. What I got for you today is a Protoss versus Protoss played on Catalyst LE, spawning in the top left corner. Beautiful 1A in the previous game. I'll try to match your skill now. A little bit of trash talk apparently starting up with this match, but regardless, spawning here in the top left corner and playing with the red Protoss probes, we have none other than Team Liquid's MaNa. And his opponent spawning in a cross position, also playing with the probes, but he is playing in blue. He goes by the nickname of DnS, and apparently he's asking MaNa what exactly is skill, or you know, what skill he's referring to. Regardless though, DnS is one of those players that's been around for a while, but not until recently have people really been talking about him a lot more. Several pro gamers have mentioned that he is considered to be one of the very best Protosses in Europe right now. Obviously, we have Showtime, we have Harstem, who are all known to be very good. Showtime probably the best one in Europe right now, but DnS is actually way up there as well. Talk to me when you can beat good. Guys, we get a little bit of trash talk right here at the beginning of the game. This is actually a rather interesting subject, and not a lot of people think this should be allowed. In particular in-game. I'm not a particularly big fan of it either if it's like a massive tournament. But I guess in like ladder matches and, you know, smaller online cups and whatnot, it's not that big of a deal. A little bit of personality has never hurt anyone, right? I'm still convinced that is one of the reasons why we see a lot of you know, personal attacks and whatnot in sports like boxing, where players of course stand right in front of each other and at the very least shake each other's hands and all that. I don't really mind a little bit of trash talk here and there. Just a little bit of intimidation, as long as it's not happening in-game at the biggest of tournaments. I think it's all fun and games. Most of these guys will, of course, be very familiar with each other's playstyle. Now, this is going to be a Protoss versus Protoss, right? And I mentioned it earlier, but DnS has been one of those players who's been around for a while, but not until recently has he become a lot more powerful. This could of course be due to the new patch, but a lot of people have mentioned that he is quickly becoming one of the very best non-Korean players, and since I'm personally not all too familiar with his playstyle just yet, at the very least not as familiar as I am with Liquid MaNa's, I think it is about time we jump into his games a little bit more often and figure out what he is all about. I just looked it up actually. He's currently the rank 1 player in France. Of course, there are several great players in France, but DnS is currently significantly so ahead of the game there. You know, it's about time we figure out exactly what kind of style he likes to play and what kind of player he is. Both players opening up with some quick Stalkers here. Of course, Stalkers very, very powerful. And now we do see that tech switch towards the Stargate here for DnS. No tech of choice just yet for MaNa. He may very well be going for an expansion here in just a little bit. We will have to keep an eye out on that. But for now, he's just simply adding on that third gateway here already. Now, the Protoss versus Protoss matchup, it's actually been pretty interesting. DnS, by the way, confirming that there is no natural up just yet. The Protoss versus Protoss matchup, it has been changing up a lot recently. Protoss versus Protoss is one of those matchups, of course, that was already dominated with Stalkers in the earlier part of the game, but we used to see a lot more adept play as well. With the recent buff to the Stalker, all of a sudden we see this unit coming out continuously in the earlier part of the game. Both players already trying to get as many of those out as they possibly can. Now, Blizzard did recently announce that they're actually going to be nerfing the Stalker somewhat, so maybe that's going to bring a little bit of variety once again. But we'll have to keep an eye out on where the meta goes, because, of course, with the new multiplayer patch, it's still going to take months. Right? Like, a lot of people are already thinking that the meta is currently settled. It really isn't. It's gonna take months for people to figure out exactly what the go-to answers are going to be in a lot of these scenarios. Now, both players are indeed going for expansions right now. DnS a little bit faster on his, also chrono boosting out that very first Void Ray. And speaking of chrono boost, it is also being changed up once again. Rather than increasing the production speed by 100%, it's gonna be increased by 50% instead. But the duration of chrono boost will last twice as long. Essentially not resulting in a massive change, but it will be an elegant solution to a lot of early game rushes. I actually really like that. Just to make chrono boost a little bit less powerful, but still, you know, great in the later stages of the game as well. I think it's one of the best changes you can probably make right now. In particular regarding the Protoss versus Terran matchup, where Terran has been struggling against the variety of builds that Protoss has been throwing at them. Now, a single Brave Adept trying to make its way across the map. This one will indeed have a little bit of scouting information there, so it will confirm that there is indeed an expansion up here for the Protoss player in red. And also the tech of choice here for MaNa is going to be that robotics facility. Of course, there are several different ways you can play this right now. A single shield battery though in the mineral line, I like this decision here a lot. Shield batteries, of course, very powerful, can definitely deal a lot of damage in the form of healing. It sounds a little bit silly to put it like that, right? But for example, if an Oracle comes in, you can actually keep your probes alive for quite a while longer just because of that single shield battery. And with, of course, the help of Stalkers, you can just simply, you know, keep on continuously pushing onwards. Ooh, I quite like this. Look at that, an hallucinated Oracle. This is one of those things that's rather uncommon, right? Look at this. So MaNa right now knows that it's gonna be more than likely Stargate because he hasn't really seen anything else, and at the very least he will confirm so right now if he didn't already. But there's 2 Oracles right now flying across the map, one being fake. This may actually result in a couple of worker kills here and there. Depths, by the way, do get cancelled there. So the one is going into the natural here. I think the other one may have already been sniped. And while not a whole lot of probes do go down here, I do like the little bit of a back and forth that we are seeing out of both of these players here so far. Additional gateways coming in here for MaNa right now as well, so he is looking like he wants to pile on the pressure. Of course, Blink will be finishing up in just a little bit too. We do see that Immortal play now from DnS, so this means that he's going to be capable of, at the very least, keeping his units alive for that a little while longer, if indeed the Stalker play does decide to move across here. But so far, though, I like this early game here. As you can see, both players already showing their variety in builds. It does look like there's no solid, straightforward build just yet that you may necessarily want to execute in the Protoss versus Protoss matchup. Instead, it seems to be more or less preference, which is definitely something that I would see, that I would like to see a lot more of in StarCraft 2, in particular in the mirror matchups. For example, in Zerg versus Zerg, you really don't have much of a choice other than to open up with Zerglings and, you know, Banelings. And while technically speaking, you could jump straight into Roaches, I like it whenever players get to, you know, play their own preference. And I think that Terran versus Terran and Protoss versus Protoss allow a lot more variety in these kind of scenarios. Pretty passive early game here, though, for both of these players. Blink is done right now. Third Nexus is coming in for MaNa as well. He's gonna follow this up with just simply more and more Stalkers. And right now, we finally also see a War Prism coming out. And MaNa, of course, is gonna be able to use that to his advantage here in just a little bit if he wants to reinforce this army. Oracles now trying to make their way towards the natural. Apparently the sentries are a little bit worried there for just a little bit, but I think that this is gonna probably be more than enough. Of course, Blink is still gonna be very helpful here. And in the meantime, a lot of Stalkers here have made their way across the map as well, and MaNa is gonna try and pile on the pressure. Whew, a little bit of a Blink back and forth right there, just to make sure that no critical losses are indeed taken here in the earlier part of the game. Of course, these Void Rays and Immortals are very good at killing stuff, but Blink is still pretty useful as well, and whenever it's off cooldown, apparently MaNa is going to poke in to try and deal a little bit of damage, although apparently one of those Stalkers right there was sacrificial. Not entirely sure if that was the most efficient trade, but so far, I mean, it's just a little bit of back and forth, right? Players are trying to micro at 2 ends at once. Obviously not the easiest thing to do, but both of them are currently now transitioning towards a third base as well. 3 Adepts going into the War Prism. 3 Adepts, of course, being the perfect number to one-shot probes. Definitely something you do want to do, but a lot of the additional production is now coming in here for both of the players. And finally, do we see MaNa making his decision as far as tech of choice goes. He's going to stick to that War Prism play here and probably harass his opponent for a little while. But while that is all going on, we do also now see him switching towards the Disruptor. And I think that one of these Oracles indeed will go up in a puff of green clouds. Because all of a sudden, of course, the Stalkers were there to snipe that single flyer as well. But right now, we do see the robotics facility producing those Disruptors. Now, Disruptors are actually receiving a tiny little nerf in just a couple of days as well. Disruptors will essentially have a little bit of charge up time, and the cooldown will also be increased between the Purification Novas, if I'm not mistaken. Obviously, they may still change that up before the changes do go live, but regardless, it is being changed a little bit. Ooh, nice snipe actually right there on that Void Ray, keeping the Stalkers alive as well. Really nicely done, making this push a little bit easier to hold. We actually now do also see those stasis wards coming into play here for DNS, finally capturing a majority of the adepts here. And this is actually rather annoying right now, because he's going to be forced to leave these units here at home for a little while longer, while there is indeed a big push coming in right now, as there are indeed Archons and Immortals for the player in blue versus Disruptors, and Disruptors can deal so much damage in a short amount of time. Nice force fields there, although they do get popped almost immediately by the Archons, of course, massive units as well. Blink, an extremely powerful upgrade, making this quite a bit more useful too. I like this Warp Prism play here as well, though, keeping these units alive for a little while longer. And while the Disruptors eventually do pop, we see Warp-ins here for both players. Just barely getting the snipe right there on that Warp Prism as well. And MaNa looks like he will be able to deflect this aggression here for now. But in the meantime, here on the other side of the map, we do see that continued aggression as well with these Adepts, just simply warping them in 3 at a time. And all of a sudden, MaNa finds himself with a massive lead. Look at that. The supply count definitely is not lying. He's got significantly more workers than his opponent, and he is still continuing that harassment as well. MaNa definitely showing his opponent who is boss here so far into this game, as he is not one to be messed with. And apparently, he's gonna continue double producing all of these robotics facility disruptors right now. Disruptors just simply providing so much value right there for the player in red. What exactly is the counter going to be, though, from DNS? I mean, so far, he's actually going to be switching into Phoenixes. This is something that we have seen quite a bit in the past. Essentially, the idea is, and I don't know how, yeah, it looks like he's actually going to be committing right here as well to the Phoenixes. The idea behind Phoenixes, generally speaking, is that you want to pick up the Disruptors before the explosion can go off. This is obviously a very difficult thing to do, but if you lift up the Disruptors while they are throwing their Purification Novas, and I actually just threw around my keyboard apparently, but if you manage to do so successfully, and a couple more probes do end up dying here, if you manage to do so successfully, you can prevent the Purification Novas from really dealing any kind of damage whatsoever. And he's even gonna commit right now to a second starport. Or Stargate rather. That's actually so sick. Is he gonna go double gate Phoenix? That is such a ballsy move. I mean, it's one of the ways you can come back. If we look right now at the army right here of Liquid MaNa, 99% of the damage is coming out of these Disruptors, okay? Everything else is just gonna be more or less like a, you know, a nice little play here as well to zone away at your opponent's army, but the main risk is definitely going to be this Disruptor-based army. All of the Stalkers and whatnot will easily go down here to the Immortals as well as the Archons. And I think that that is going to be, you know, that is going to be something to keep in mind as well. Of course, these Stalkers are just simply going to move across. He's actually going to be showing the Phoenixes right now as well. Does force the cancel on that 4th Nexus, while MaNa is already taking his right here in the top right corner. Nice move there, actually, by the player in red. Just simply keeping his opponent at bay right there, not allowing him to claw his way back into the game. But look at that. Double Disruptors coming in against 2 Phoenixes at a time as well. I am not entirely sure how this next engagement will go. Judging by the supply count as well as the amount of army here that's available for MaNa, this should go heavily in his favor. But with a proper set of lifts, right? Do you even lift is what the Phoenixes are asking right now. With a proper set of lifts, these Disruptors can be absolutely nullified, and then everything else that's here on the ground for DNS can actually clean up everything that is on the ground for his opponent as well. This could become rather interesting here. Still more and more Phoenixes are coming in. Phoenixes are one of those units that are oftentimes not considered to be counters to anything, but they can essentially kill everything on the ground if you manage to get enough of them. Obviously, there are some units you can't lift, but I'm sure you get what I mean. Like, they are very, very potent when it comes to these engagements, because if you can take care of, you know, the big damage dealers in your opponent's army, you can just simply deal so much damage with the remainder of your force as well. We'll have to keep an eye out on exactly what's going to happen here, because I think we are once again setting up for a bit of an engagement. Stalkers now actually getting picked up as well. Few of them will end up dying here, but Disruptors are available, and immediately the Purification Novas will go down. A couple of the Phoenixes now also dying here too. That's a little bit painful there for DNS, but MaNa is just simply playing this safe and sound. I like this decision here by him as well. Not really taking any kind of unnecessary risks and just trying to get to a point where he is capable of getting to a maxed out amount of supply. He's getting awfully close to exactly that though. So many Disruptors. Look at the amount of Purification Novas available right now. How many would that make? 12 of them in total versus 9 Phoenixes. Two are just about to finish though, and I think that MaNa for now has stopped the production here of these units for a while longer, because look at the amount that he can already deal here. Gotta be careful though, the Purification Novas in this tight choke can be absolutely terrifying. Of course, they would just simply explode and deal a massive amount of damage. And while MaNa is happily mining off of his 4th base right here in the top right corner, and DNS now finally secured his as well, I think we may very well be setting ourselves up right here for a major engagement. Disruptors are trying to land a couple of those Purification Novas, not quite getting them just yet. Rocks are actually down as well, preventing these units from coming in, but the Phoenixes are now moving forward. I think he's gonna try and lift them all. He's gonna try and lift as many of these Disruptors as he possibly can. Archons and Immortals are now pushing forward as well, going after the remaining forces here for MaNa, but MaNa is indeed forced to mass recall out of there. But all of a sudden, DNS managed to shut down a massive army for his opponent. We see 180 supply right now for DNS versus 170, while MaNa was behind, or very significantly ahead actually, earlier on into this game. DNS has managed to even up the supply counts with an army composition based around Archons, Zealots, and Immortals, and then a ton of Phoenixes as well. I love this decision. I really like this decision. I mean, look at this. If you're gonna be capable of taking all of these Disruptors out of the engagement, you can just simply, pounce on your opponent's army here if you are DNS. It's just such a slippery slope, because if you mess up for even a split second, you're probably gonna end up either losing your Phoenixes or just simply all of your units, because the Disruptors, of course, they deal a lot of damage. The Purification Novas do travel very rapidly as well, and that of course means that if you're not careful, they may accidentally blow up all of your units. So this is really going to be a battle of micros here. Both players definitely going for their own little setup. High Templar now coming in as well, and I think this may very well be for feedback. That's of course a really interesting mechanic as well, because if you can feedback these units before they can lift up the Disruptors, and the blue Protoss player does pounce forward, there's a good chance you can still land those Purification Novas. But once again, DNS is trying to maneuver forward here. This is starting to look like an engagement that Liquid MaNa does not want to take. He's trying to retreat up that choke. Now also forced to go after these rocks here. A couple of the Novas once again coming in though. Trying their very best to do a little bit of damage there, but not quite getting the connections just yet. That 5th base there will be forced to get cancelled as well. And speaking of 5th bases, DNS did just select his own there in a bit of a peculiar position. Not going for the one in the bottom left-hand corner. But once again, DNS is trying to see if he can get a bit of an engagement here. We see all of these High Templar now moving forward as well. If they manage to get the feedbacks, this could still go either way. Beautiful play here so far, but it looks like there's just simply so much of that ground force remaining for DNS. Look at the amount of Archons and Immortals just simply pouncing on this opportunity and trying to close out this game right here. I think that must be Polish, although I don't know if DNS speaks any Polish. MaNa, of course, is going to be from Poland, so he may just know something in his native tongue. And Liquid MaNa says, GG wrecked. What? He's the one that lost, though. I wouldn't be surprised if these guys are actually good friends and are just, just simply trash talking each other a little bit in a friendly manner. But I kind of want to know what exactly it means, what DNS just said. Alrighty. So this is what DNS said.
Było naprawdę źle.
Thank you very much, Google Translate, for that beautiful addition to this video. But apparently it means the following.
It was really bad.
Well, there we go. Apparently DNS was explaining to his opponent that that what MaNa was doing there, I guess, was really bad. Regardless, though, fun match here between these two Protoss players. Definitely some of the very best in Europe right now. I'm going to keep an eye out on, in particular, DNS over 2018 and the years to come as well. I want to see how good this guy can become. But for now, I want to thank you for watching. Have an amazing day. Do not forget to smile, alright? If you're new to the channel, do make sure you hit that subscribe button so you get a notification as soon as future videos go live as well. And of course, a special shout out to the Patreon supporters. You guys are awesome. Thank you for supporting the channel. But I will see you all in the next one.